The Son, the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councillor Caulfield?
Here.
Councillor Donahue?
Here.
Councillor Elliott?
Here.
Mayor Martin?
Here.
Councillor Armand Mercia?
Here.
Councillor Rita Mercia?
Here.
Councillor Milanazzo?
Here.
Councillor Ramirez?
Here.
Councillor Broderick?
Here.
Do have one request for myself for a moment of silence, which I would like to offer for Jean Normandin. Jean was a resident of Chelmsford for many years, but had businesses here in Lowell, was the general manager at Manzi Dodge and Custom Sentry Alarms, a longtime supporter of the Sacred Heart School and Parish, and he would be sorely missed. Could all rise, please. The first item on the agenda is a presentation from Frank Singleton, the Board of Health Director, about the bird flu pandemic. Mr. Singleton?
Thank you, Mayor. I try to figure out how to approach this without taking a lot of your time tonight. So there's a packet on each of your tables with a Word document that explains in much more detail than I'm planning to do now, unless you want me to, which I highly doubt, because it is a complicated subject, and then go quickly through where we are right now with the status. So if you look at your packet on the left, read that later. That's my three-page sort of summary. And the main point is avian flu, bird flu is not pandemic flu. There is no pandemic flu in the world right now. The avian flu is very dangerous to birds. About 200 people in the world have caught it by very close contact with birds, mostly in Cambodia, Vietnam, India, places like that. And it is fairly dangerous, but that's not a disease that's easily spread human to human, and it's not pandemic flu. The packet that might be more interesting is the one to the right, and what that basically boils down, I'm sorry, the one to the left rather, as you go through the packet, you'll see after my first 3 pages, a table. This one's in color, but yours is in black and white. And these are the hospitals based on the projection by the state of what we would face in Lowell, the first wave of an 8 to 10 week period of pandemic flu. And basically what it boils down to is a hell of a lot of people are going to be sick, and much more than normally. And we're going to have to deal with the consequences of a lot of people being out absent, a lot of disruptions in the supply chain, and a lot of people needing medical care on a hospital and medical system that's already overloaded as it is. So the numbers are there. I could go through them if you want, but basically we're talking about 15,000 people in Lowell getting sick, 30,000 people getting sick, rather, 15,000 needing medical care during the 8 weeks. About 1,200 will need hospitalization. The rest will be handled on an outpatient basis. And later on, I have some tables and the like to sort of explain how we're going to take this elephant and eat it one bite at a time by breaking it up into its components. We had a meeting today. That's the next one, dated May 9th, with all the emergency planners in the region, all 7 local health departments, Lowell and the 6 contiguous, both hospitals plus Emerson Hospital, and how we're going to handle the problem of this medical surge. And I think we do have some solutions that will come forward that we will be able to handle. The other thing in your packet is tonight's movie at 8 o'clock. There's a rather, I understand, alarmist movie. This is from the federal government, 5 pages of talking points explaining why the movie may be more extreme in its presentation of what might happen during a real pandemic than otherwise would be the case. We're prepared with our staff tomorrow to answer any phone calls from the public. In essence, we have started the flu planning process. We're building on our existing planning that we have for infectious control diseases. The difference here is this is going on for weeks, if not months, not for 1 or 2 or 3 days. and it'll require a lot more partnership with hospitals, home health care, pharmacies, and the like than we normally do in emergency planning, which are usually pretty short term. I hope to have a full plan ready for the city's final adoption with all our partners by the end of this calendar year. We have started very good progress being made. We've drafted some documents, but it ain't simple because the numbers are so large and the time frame so long, and there's so many people that have to be involved besides the city itself, that it's not simple to draft and develop. But we have excellent support from the people we've met with so far. The 2 hospitals and the health department have now been meeting for the last several months on their plans dovetailing with our emergency plans. And if you want, I can either go some more detail or open it up to questions, or maybe invite me back when you have a chance to not only maybe catch the movie tonight, but read the material that's in your packet, because I hate to spend 15 to 20 minutes going over these technical details unless you so desire.
Thank you, Mr. Singleton. Councilor Rita Mercier?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Director Singleton, for being up here this evening to address this very important issue. I've heard much talk that this is nothing but a scare tactic, and it's making people very nervous and afraid as to this possible flu that probably won't even hit the area. And I just want to alert people that it is our responsibility to just alert people that it's possible that it could be here. It's better to be prepared and have nothing ever happen than to not be prepared at all. And so I did attend the symposium that was put forth at the Songus Arena along with T.J. McCarthy, the Assistant City Manager. I found it very informative. I know that your staff will be ready to take phone calls should anything like this happen. And that's simply what I just wanted to say, because I think this is something, whether it happens or it doesn't, that when it strikes and people go to the store and panic and stock up in food, that's a little bit too late, because people will be walking around the store being carriers to this thing and not even realizing it. So it's better that you supply yourself at home and stay there so that you're not being exposed to it, because from what I've understood, Lowell has to take care of Lowell. It isn't a mutual response where we're easily going to call Tingsboro or Boston or somewhere and have them come in and help the city. They'll be fighting this for their own territory themselves in their own areas. So I think that it's just wise that this city has always been above board instead of reacting after the fact, but to be prepared. It's preparedness, and that's strictly what I want to say. And whether you believe what you're hearing or not, I just don't want you to say, gee, my relative was sick and died, and I knew nothing about it and nobody told us. And I know that we will be alerting the public, the hospitals. We'll do something on LTC, announcement, a public service announcement, perhaps the radio or whatever, the newspaper. And let's hope to God that nothing ever happens, and then we can easily get by this. But, I mean, we prepared ourselves for the year 2000. Let's at least prepare ourselves that this possibly could happen. And so, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Manager, for having this issue addressed.
Thank you. Councilor Armin Mercier?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, is it possible to have this report, although in a condensed form, placed on a website for the interest of the general public? Huh? I think that would, spread throughout the city a lot more than just being before us tonight. So if we look at that possibility. Thank you.
Okay, anything further on this topic? Okay, thank you, Mr. Singleton. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the May 2nd meeting for acceptance. Motion to accept by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We have 2 matters under unfinished business: ordinance, Chapter 13, increase of rates and charges for parking and parking facilities, and an ordinance increase for fines for parking. Both of these ordinances received their first and second reading last week, and it's not required to read them in detail. I believe you all have them. There's also a request from Councilors Donahue and Elliott to consider their motions, the first 2 motions on the agenda, in connection with this debate on the ordinances. Is there any objection to that? Okay, so why don't I read those motions? The first is a motion by Councilors Elliott and Donahue. The City Council requests the city manager have the city solicitor inform the City Council of the possible rescission regarding the $4.5 million bond for the parking facility in the Hamilton Canal District, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. And the second motion by Councilor Donahue requests the City Council vote to rescind its previous vote on the loan order for $4.5 million for the construction of a public parking facility, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. Councilor Donahue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The second motion should actually read, request council vote to rescind the loan order of $4.5 million for the parking facility should the ordinances of rate increases not pass. That was the intent of the motion. And as you may recall, 2 weeks ago, we did approve the loan order, or majority of the council approved the loan order, but the rate increase ordinances were postponed, which was the intent or plan to use the rate increases to pay for the loan order. So the intent of, and I will let Councilor Elliott speak to the motion, but the intent is to seek an opinion from the law department as to whether, should the rate increase not be approved, whether the council can vote to rescind, and what, if any, effect the failure to approve the rate increase has on the overall bond rating for the city, not just for this $4.5 million, but in general. So perhaps it makes sense. I don't know if Councilor Elliott has something to say, if we can get that. But I wanted to just correct the record as to what the second motion should read.
Okay, so noted. Councilor Elliott?
Well, I think Councilor Donahue really sort of addressed a lot of the concerns that I have as well, and that is how are we going to pay for the garage? What I didn't see, and I don't know if the manager or I don't know, Mr. Carney is here, is what is the actual cost on an annual basis for the entire loan authorization, not just this 4.5 for the garage? What is the total cost for up to date? I know we bonded 1.75 in addition to the 22.5, but
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
the
Mr.
additional,
Manager.
I'm sorry, the additional $4.5 million, I think we need about $285,000. Is that right to cover that? Matt?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager. The total cost, if we were to stay with the $28 million, would be annual debt service of $2,150,000.
okay, and that would be the additional 4.5, the additional 1.75, and then what? Can you tell me what the original authorization was, Mr.?
Sure. It was $22 million.
It was 22. Okay. So just for this, just for the garage alone, and does that include a contingency fund?
Yeah, in the
What
budget, there is
percentage?
still a 6% contingency, or $1.3 million and change is
Okay.
still in the budget itself.
And what did we do on? And maybe I'm getting into other things other than the actual loan order, but my concern is this going to be enough? And my next question is about environmental conditions on the site. We did a phase one.
Actually, all of the environmental contamination has been removed. It was actually one of the few areas that came in under budget, probably one of the first times for a public project in this community. We had allocated about $500,000 and spent about $150,000. If you remember, at one point we had done an update. Initially, we believed that there were 5 underground storage tanks due to the subsurface work that was done. In the end, there was actually only 1. The other elements that triggered the X-ray were actually leftover pipes and so forth from a previous structure. So all the contamination has been resolved. The site is clean and ready to go.
Okay, and what is the term of this note is the 2.15? Does that include all short-term borrowing costs?
That is inclusive of everything.
And over 25 years or 30 years?
20 years, I believe, Mr. Kennedy. Yeah, 20 years.
Okay, I have to say, I wasn't going to support this because I think we're paying too much for the garage, but it really would have been nice to get that information as well. How much is it going to cost over, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and I think it would be important. And regardless of what happens tonight, I'd like to get that information, the spreadsheet as to, just like we would give to bond counsel, which leads me to my next concern is, voting for this additional money without voting for the method to pay for it, the revenue, really was a concern to me. And I'll only presume that bond counsel, and I have spoken with Christine subsequent to this, would look at it and would have an effect. I don't know what effect it would have on our bond rating, but it would. And I know that they would look at our levy ceiling. I know that they would look at how much we spend and our revenues and receipts. But spending this much money without a means to pay for it, I would argue that it would have an adverse effect on our bond rating. So that was the reason why I'm not going to support the rate increase anyway. So my concern is it costs too much. I did support the parking garage. I thought it was a good idea. I even supported the additional money, but I think we're pricing ourselves into a corner, and it doesn't make sense. That's the reason why I think that we need to take another look at it, go back to the drawing board, and look at some other options, including developers that need space. I mean, why should ratepayers or taxpayers, or anybody for that matter, pay for a garage that developers, or at least let developers participate and make a contribution to the garage? So, these and other issues, I am concerned about it, and I'm concerned about, raising rates and shifting it completely to the businesses. I've received many emails from individuals that would be affected by this that are upset and completely opposed to it, and I don't disagree. And lastly, my concern is these are general obligation bonds, and ultimately, if the revenue doesn't come in, if the parking fines don't come in, it's going back on the rate, and again, we're going backwards. So that's my point. That's the reason for the motion, and I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just be very brief, just to clarify our position on this matter. The administration's position, which was recommended to the subcommittee, which I think was unanimously approved by the subcommittee, was to clearly go forth on this garage. Clearly, it's more money than we had hoped it was going to be. But when Chuck Carney did a analysis of the revenue generated from the garage, he says up to 60, up to 75% of the users of the garage don't live in the city. And so it seemed to us that, and then even if we did raise the rates of the garage, I'm told that these rates would still be lower than parking rates in the city of Lawrence. So there's only two ways to pay for it, clearly. One is the users pay for it, and two is the taxpayers pay for it. We approve. We favor the former. We favor the users paying for it. Clearly we don't like to increase rates at all, but it's going to be necessary if we're going to go forth with the garage. Now, if we're not going to go forth with the garage, then clearly we lose the American Heritage Foundation, who were here last week. They made their position clear. We lose the development of the Adden Furniture Building. We lose the development of the CMAA building. And that's the reality. That's the reality of the situation. So if we're not going to go forth on the garage, then that's certainly something we can do. But those decisions need to be made, and obviously they need to be made quickly. If there's no garage there, then obviously that affects the JAM plan. I think it affects the Hamilton Canal District as well. But we clearly, I agree with you, Council. I wouldn't put forth an increase in the bond rate, an increase in the bond that would not have a revenue stream to pay for it. I recommended the revenue stream to pay for it, and that being that the people who use the garages pay for it, especially when a majority of them don't live in the city. So that's our position. Clearly, it's up to the council as to what they want to do, but I think there are ramifications out there if this garage is not built, clearly.
Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could have the Assistant City Manager, Director, Matt Coggins. Mr. Coggins, how many bid packages were taken out from the Planning Department on this building of this garage?
Approximately 63.
And how many were returned?
For sub-bids, approximately 40. There was a statement at one of the meetings that was really incorrect, saying that 70 bids packages went out and only 2 came back. That's not at all accurate. About 63 went out, almost 40 came back as sub-bids. And the sub-bidders were plumbing, electric, glass work, HVAC, elevators. Then as a separate process, there were 5 general contractors that were pre-qualified to actually bid on the project. Of those 5, only 2 in the end actually submitted. The pre-qualification is actually a requirement by the state. A lot of talk has happened about the garage at UMass. UMass is exempted from that process as a state agency. So they did not have to follow the very same process that we have to as a municipality.
So they can build a 630 space garage for $13 million. How come we're paying so much?
There are a number of factors. If you look at the structure that UMass is building, it is strictly a matter of function. It is a vastly different structure than what we are proposing. And from the beginning, the proposal was really to create a signature building in the JAM plan as a symbol of the public investment. So it's a very different structure. And at the same time, their bids were done 6 months before ours. Now, we would look at that as an individual and say, well, 6 months is not a tremendous amount of time. But if you look at the escalation of construction costs over the last year, over the last 6 months, it makes a tremendous difference. So when you take those 2 issues and put them together, it created a different scenario by which their bid came in significantly lower than ours.
You're talking about a $10 million difference in 6 months?
Well, not only the difference in timing, but also the fact that it's a very different structure.
And what happens now to the JAM plan if the garage is not built? What happens here?
Well, as the manager pointed out, 2 of the largest buildings that are slated for redevelopment are the CMA building and the Ad and Furniture building. By our own zoning, those buildings cannot be redeveloped unless that developer can come up with 236 parking spaces. One of the proposals that we had thrown out earlier was you could create a surface lot. The most a surface lot would create is 275 spaces. And as I think I mentioned at one of the subcommittee meetings, we got to 275 by actually having less landscaping and screening than we would allow somebody else to do. We just did it as an exercise saying, what's the most we could get on here? So again, without a parking structure, those 2 buildings cannot by zoning have enough parking to be redeveloped. Then obviously there's the concerns that this body has heard before from the existing businesses that are suffering right now and need parking. So it would be a serious blow to the efforts in that area.
I believe that too. And having said that, what are the possibilities? What's your opinion when people say, well, why don't we just build the garage in steps, like 2 stories at a time? And having said that, I'm thinking from a real estate point of view that, in my opinion, I hear that it's better to buy a home with as many rooms as you need than to buy a home and start adding on to it.
First of all, let me say, I'm neither an architect nor a structural engineer. However, my assumption based on the project we've worked on is you would still be incurring a tremendous amount of cost to build a sufficient foundation and supports to even eventually build upper decks. What that would actually work out to in terms of real cost, I couldn't tell you, but I'd be surprised if there was much of a savings at all to attempt something like that.
Right, thank you, and I'm all through with the questions, but I do have some comments here. Whatever happens, in my opinion, to this vote on the garage happens. It's strictly each individual's choice. But I can't let this moment pass without directing you to the Tuesday council meeting of a few weeks ago when we were in the acre and 3 of us on the council voted in opposition of a development plan. At that time, we were told by fellow councilors that we voted and supported the overall concept of the acre redevelopment plan, and how in good conscience can we go against what we, so many years before, voted to support? How can we go against our word? Well, lo and behold, the person at the newspaper who thinks he rules the city wrote an editorial that was in his Saturday morning brag fest or chat or whatever you want to call it. He spewed the exact words said on the council floor that 3 of my colleagues that didn't support the acre plan made a promise by our vote to support the plan, and we were going against our word, as if we committed a mortal sin and would rot in hell because we felt the development did not fit the bill, because we had an opinion. And I'm not saying we were right or wrong, but we had an opinion and we stated it. Well, let me direct your attention to the garage vote. And a while ago, 3 councilors said no regarding this garage vote. But back in March of 2000, a unanimous vote was taken after a lengthy presentation by the DPD, which included the building of a municipal parking garage on page 27 of this very DPD book. This garage, as indicated in the newspaper on April 25th, will be a catalyst for residential development, as reported in the as reported, the jam plan hinges on this garage vote, and is the main ingredient in making the jam plan a huge success. The garage is key. You have a right to your beliefs, just as I did in the acre. I'm not saying this because you should support what I say, but I'm allowing you to support what you feel is best. But I'm wondering, will we see an editorial on Saturday in the chat as to why councilors threw a wrench in the jam plan, the way that we supposedly threw a wrench in the acre plan? I'm just trying to be fair here. I don't think you'll see it. That's why I don't take much stock in what I read, but I just had to express my opinion. I'm only asking that you be fair. If something feels right, support it. If you feel this is your opinion, do it. But don't curse me and justify yourself. Whatever happens with this vote happens, but I had to get that out.
Councilor
You
Armin
can laugh
Mercier.
all you want, but that's the truth.
I have a question. I think at the last meeting, time was of an essence. An award needed to be made by, I think, the 25th. Is that right, Mr. Manager?
I believe it's the 23rd, 24th, something like that, Council. Obviously, the Law Department and DPD are working on the contract with the builder
Has
currently.
the builder been notified that an award has been made?
Yes.
And so if this vote to rescind takes place, wouldn't it be, and through you to the city solicitor, wouldn't there be a lawsuit following? Or could there be?
Well, there could be. I mean, there always could be. But in this case, an award letter has gone out, but there have been no signed contracts yet.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I supported the 4.5 million, and I'll continue to support it. We had something left on our desk this evening outlining 2 different ways to pay for it, I guess, and I have heard from a lot of people, as well as everybody else in the room here tonight, as far as rate increases. And my feeling on is that if the garage can sustain itself based upon what we're receiving for income now, revenue from it now, that we ought to use that money until it doesn't, which I think Mr. Carney's numbers came out to be FY 2010. I would take the position that instead of paying the money to the city to go to the general fund and then raising the rates, if we're truly going to make the users pay for the garages, then we ought to use the money received from the garages for the garages first, and then any overage could go to the city. But I think that to raise the rates right now, 2 years into it, I would be more comfortable using the money we receive from the garages, and then in 3 years, now we're talking 5 years out. I know other communities, the parking garage rates are higher, but I think they have other issues to deal with as well, and they're probably a lot more vacant. I think that this is a very difficult issue. As I said before, I don't think anybody wants to pay more money for anything nowadays. The cost of living has gone up tremendously in every aspect, and it's a difficult decision. My concern is that we do have a plan that is going to be, basically, in my opinion, from what I've seen and heard, is going to be stalled. Development that's going to be stalled, and that it's unfortunate that the cost has gone up, but I think it's something that I'm going to support, and I think, but I would say that I will not support the rate increase. And maybe we could get an explanation as to what that does with the bond rating. But at this time, that would be my position. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Manager.
Just one point. I just want to be clear. Obviously, Mr. Carney has, at my request, put forth several recommendations or alternatives to try to pay for this. If we take the revenue sharing from the garages that we are using now, that's money that's coming into the general fund. That's money we are using to build our budget. Make no mistake about it. If we take that $200,000 or so, if we take $200,000 away from that at this point for this purpose, then we have $200,000 less in revenue for the budget next month. And that's going to show up. There's no way, this is not, we can't finagle old money here. This is new money, and everybody should be aware of that. We need new money to cover this. So if we're taking money from the revenue sharing, which currently it has been and is for '07 slated for local receipts, then if we take $200,000 out of that, then we will be short $200,000 in local receipts as we build our budget. So everybody's clear with that.
Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Two issues. As you know, I filed a motion. We're talking about rate increases. I think my motion should be brought up as part of this overall debate. The Handicap Commission.
Why don't I read that, Councilor? Is there any objection to taking up that motion as well?
Well, I just want you to include it in the overall picture. The statute indicates throughout the state a $300 fine for parking in a handicap parking spot, and every community in the greater Lowell area, Mr. Mayor, charges $300. So that's why I filed that motion, and the Handicap Commission also sent a letter of support for that motion. I just want to bring that forward. I certainly agree with the manager. You're going to rob Peter to pay Paul somewhere down the line. If you take $200,000 out of the general fund, there's $200,000 you don't have to stabilize the taxes. As far as the rate increases, I certainly could support exempting the residents who live downtown a rate increase, and I would support that. But those who use the garage on a daily basis, who don't live in Lowell, who utilize the garage, I would support a rate increase for them, but not for the residents who live downtown. And I think that's being fair. Without that garage, you're not going to have no development, period. And we had developers here 2 weeks ago with artist renditions of what it could look like if there was a garage. If there's no garage, Mr. Mayor, you're not going to have any developers come forward. So it's a double-edged sword. You have to bite the bullet somewhere along the line. So I agree with the manager. If you take $200,000 out of the general fund, you're going to have to find that $200,000 somewhere else, and that's in the tax levy. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't I read Councilor Caulfield's motion, if I could? The motion, City Council requests the City Manager have the Law Department draw a proper vote to increase the handicap parking fine from $100 to $300. I believe the proposal, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercier, the proposal, I guess, last week presented would raise the fine from $100 to $200. So that is now before us as well. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, when this garage was first proposed and I believe was unanimously supported, and as I stated previously, I supported the garage, still do, just not at this price tag. We were told it was going to cost $16 million. That's what we were told. That's what we supported. We are far, far above $16 million at this point. It's a runaway train. Now, do we need a garage down there? I mean, you know, the arguments have been made. Obviously, people have stated their position. But for the record, I want to state it again. Yeah, we do. But is it this plan? Is it this design? Is it at this time? You know, I've heard from a number of people, architects, people in the business who have contacted me since this debate has been on. No one can explain this outrageous $5 million increase for precast concrete, which has been passed off for precast concrete. Supposedly people in the business say that's nonsense, that it's been an increase but not a $5 million increase over 3 months. That raises a red flag. Whether or not it makes sense, as has been suggested, to redesign. Will it cost money to redesign? Yeah, but I'd rather make a $1 million mistake than a $28 million mistake. We have retail included in this garage. Retail space on the first floor, which would be great if we can afford it. But take a look at Merrimack Street. I mean, we have so many vacant storefronts there that maybe we're not in a position to be building retail at this point. If we took the retail factor or some of the retail factor out of it, would it bring the price tag down? That's all that the argument being made here is, there's nothing wrong with stepping back and taking a look. When the arena was first proposed, everybody thought it was great. The bids came in over $40 million. And so we didn't trash the idea of an arena, nor did we build a $40 million arena. We went back to the drawing board and came up with another plan, which took out the practice rink, did some other changes in terms of meeting rooms, and came up with something within the price tag. Now, in the years since the arena's been open, I haven't heard anybody say, gee, where's the practice rink? Where are all the meeting spaces? This would be a great arena, now it stinks. I haven't heard that. I hear nothing but praise for the arena and what the arena has done for the city of Lowell. So there's nothing wrong with taking a step back and trying to reassess what can we afford. $28 million, and as I've stated before, over the course of 20 years, it's going to cost you over $40 million, is too expensive. It's just too expensive. Doesn't mean you don't build a garage. It just means you don't build this style, this design. I think it would be great to have the retail, but take a look at any place in this city. We have vacant retail everywhere, everywhere. And now we're going to add to it with the city being a landlord. In a perfect world, I think it would be great, but this is too expensive. The concern that I had, and that was to get an opinion, the first motion asking the solicitor in terms of a vote to rescind. And that vote is only effective is if the council doesn't vote the rate increase. I don't support the rate increase, but I'm very concerned that if the rate increase doesn't pass, how do we pay for it? I agree with the manager. You can't say we won't vote for the rate increase and then take the money that's already being applied to the general fund. So you are going to have an impact. And if the rate increase doesn't pass, it's my understanding it will adversely affect our bond rating. Now, to what extent, we don't really know, because that would be determined in the future. But it would be an unfunded bonding. That's the concern that I have here tonight. I understand the majority has supported building the garage, but we haven't wrestled with that very problematic issue of how we pay for it. And that $4.5 million is a big issue. And if we don't raise the rates, and I don't support that, and by the way, I appreciate the concern for the residents in the downtown, but I've heard from many, many businesses in the downtown who are saying, look, for us, for people who work here, for people who may work in Lowell and live elsewhere, I mean, everybody's up in arms about this because it's less than 2 years later that we're socking them with another big rate increase. So, it just seems to me if we're not going to approve the bond, strike that we did approve the bond, if we're not going to approve the way to pay for it, the rate increase, then we shouldn't do it at this point. We should step back and scale down the project or get it back into control. That's the whole point of the motion. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the solicitor, if the rate increases proposed do not pass, then do you know whether or not that would cause the bond council to look again at the city bonding and bond in terms of our bond rating?
Well, a couple things. I mean, one, first of all, if the proposed funding source, namely the rate increases and fines, didn't pass, then as the manager has indicated, it would have to add on to our tax rate in terms of funding this thing. Right now, the loan order, as many of you are aware, is in abeyance for this 20-day period. And it's only during this 20-day period that the city could revisit this issue at all through a rescission. As far as the bond rating, the manager, I'm sure, could address this more directly. We don't have an opinion from bond counsel. I don't think it's been extensively looked at. But it was a question that I had raised with bond counsel, and that was that if it ended up increasing city taxes, could that then have an impact on our bond rating? And I think the answer is that it could. I mean, but that's not a definitive.
Right, and we don't know to what extent.
And we don't
or-
know to what extent. I don't know if the manager has any further information on that.
But it's, but you would be adding it to the tax rate. I mean, it's got to go
one or
somewhere.
the other.
It's got to get paid somewhere. And to put $4.5 million on the tax rate right now, before we've even done the budget, and, it's going to be a tight year again, too. I mean, it will jack taxes up. So, I mean, you can't, it's a question of what can we afford. That's the whole point. It's not whether there should be a garage, whether a garage is a good idea. It's whether we can afford it and whether we can afford it in this format. And before we, leap, I think we should know the repercussions. And if we're not going to support the rate increase, or we're only going to support it part way, then whatever way we don't, whatever part isn't funded is going on the tax rate. And the same is true, and that will affect the taxes. So you're either going to affect the ratepayers or the taxpayers, but you can't have it both ways. And it does have to get paid for. And if it were a $16 million garage that we thought it was going to be, we wouldn't be having this discussion, because the rates would have taken care of it and then some. That's the problem we have. That's the problem we have. What was delivered was a far cry from what was promised. Again, as I said before, that's not anybody's fault. It's just the way it turned out. But, it's not that anybody's made a mistake. I just think we have to take a breath, step back, and look at it again and find a better way to do this within our budget. And that's the budget that the current rates support.
Councilor Milonazo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Clearly, my colleagues are bringing up some very valid points, but as chairman of the Economic Development Subcommittee, I supported the garage. I continue to support the garage. Regarding the rate increases, I don't support the monthly rate increases as currently proposed. I do support increasing the parking fines as proposed. So I'm hoping that with I think it was $100,000 that would be generated from that, and then if we could dedicate some of the new revenue from projects that are proposed for the Jackson-Appleton Street area, such as the CMAA project and the Ad and Furniture project, to actually dedicate that new tax revenue toward this bond authorization, would assist with paying a portion of the $4.5 million. So, again, I think the hotels, the garage is very important. It's a catalyst to that area, as the hotel was years ago downtown, as the arena was to that whole Lawrence Mills area. And again, I'm not supporting the increase for the parking rates, but I will be supporting the increase for the parking fines.
Councilor Rita Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know what everybody's saying, and it is kind of the fact that we didn't know that it would go up $4.5 million more on top of it. But I'm thinking about what I read in the paper about the United States Postal Maintenance Garage, and they're taking that off the table because that particular area, they're not getting what they want to get. And they're taking it off until economic conditions improve. Well, shouldn't the economic conditions improve in the Hamilton project? And didn't we vote for $5 million last week or the week before? Why don't we rescind that vote, and either you can't do it both? Before you can have development there, wouldn't you need to show that we have a garage for parking before development takes place? I don't know. Maybe we should be rescinding that vote and do one or the other, but not both at the same time. Maybe we could build the garage and add that 4.5 and not tax the taxpayer. I certainly don't want to do that, but there's an idea. Why don't we just not do that development all at once at the same time as the garage? Do one or the other, but not vote. So if I had an idea, I'd say, let's at least put a garage there, and they will come, and the development will come, and we won't be worrying about it. It's just a suggestion.
Councilor Broderick was first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I neglected to mention that I would support the increases in the parking fines. And a question I had, and maybe through the manager to solicitors, there's been discussion, and there's been discussion on the boards and for years now of betterment fees and things that can help pay for improvements in the area of particular developments. And is there any, I know the city doesn't do it currently, is there any way we could implement something that might assist it in the next 2-3 years as these developments get off the ground? It's for these developers who are going to greatly benefit from this garage that everybody else is helping pay for, can throw some money into the pot to help pay for it, at least until, as Councilor Milonazo pointed out, they come online and the tax revenues are boosted, and maybe we can dedicate some of that money to help pay for the improvements in the garage in that area. But I don't know if that's ever been done in Lowell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've had this discussion, Matt and I have had this discussion. We clearly don't think that, for instance, the American Heritage Foundation is interested at all in helping to pay for this garage. Clearly, they're developers. They're putting a lot of money into their proposed development over there. So I don't think it makes any real sense. I mean, I don't even think it's something that we should even get excited about talking about, because I really don't think any of the developers that we've talked to, or any of the ones that have been involved in what's happened in the downtown, on the riverbank, they clearly were not asked, but our sense is that they would not be interested in going down that road.
Okay. And lastly, I mentioned before, or a question about a TIF that's coming offline, or however you want to put it, for the Mullis Market Basket over in the acre. I don't know if that money's been already counted in the budget yet. We haven't got a budget, but I didn't know.
Clearly it's been counted, yes.
It has been, yeah. And I know you'll bring in a tight budget, but I'm wondering if somehow there's some money we can take from that we haven't been using yet to help, help supplement pay for this.
I think that's highly unlikely.
Okay.
Councilor Ramirez.
I was wondering if Mr. Carney could come up to the podium. Mr. Carney, I appreciate you putting this proposal together for us tonight.
Thank you, Councilor.
I think you worked hard for it where there wasn't much money. Would you mind for me just going over both recommendations that you made to the administration?
Sure. What we originally did, Councilor, the parking department was asked basically to see how we would fund the bond council's number that we had given. At that time, it was $2.2 million per year that we would have to find funding for to support the new garage. So we were asked by the subcommittee through the manager to take a look at how we would recommend that be funded through the garage revenues. And we took a look actually at two areas. We looked at what we called on-street, which is the meter side of the business, as well as fines. And in that analysis, we reviewed approximately 40 of the code violations that we have that we use through the on-street side of the business. And we came up with the 5 that you have in front of you here today, that we were significantly lower than our neighbors, our neighboring towns and cities. And that's when we came back and recommended that we make those adjustments to those fines, and that generated about $100,000 in additional revenue per year into the parking revenue. The second side we looked at was the rate increases and what we would recommend and how we would do that. The first iteration of that actually was what we gave you, again, through the manager as a result of the subcommittee a week ago, which was taking all the rates and looking at those, which, as the manager has said, we are still significantly lower in our parking rates in the city of Lowell than most other towns, and I mean significantly. And looking at Worcester, looking at the Springfield, the various towns we looked at, the cities we looked at. So with that, we came back and recommended that we adjust the rates to the numbers that we had given you in that plan, and that generated approximately $285,000 in revenue. Last week, at the last council meeting, we were asked to take a look at those and see what the difference would be if we did not increase the rates of the downtown residents. And that's what you have in front of you today. You have a recommendation 1 that says if we do not increase the rates of the downtown residents, we take about $100,000 out of that $285 that we had, which means that that number becomes approximately $200,000 on that side of the ledger. And then we have the fine side, which I've already talked about. But this would say that with that plan, adjusting the rates of all other monthly pass card holders, of which we have about 3,200 in the city, that would give us approximately the $300,000 that we need in the short term to pay with the profits that we're generating in the garages. And don't forget, we're still paying debt payments for the John Street garage and for the Roy garage out of that parking revenue, besides the revenue sharing that we're doing. So this would be actually the third debt that would be taken care of through parking revenues. And as a result of that, we came back tonight with the proposal of how that would generate basically $300,000 worth of revenue. And the bottom line, Councilor, is that would be raising all the rates except the downtown residents and recommending that you raise the fines that we've given to you in the 5 areas that we've identified.
Thank you. And the second proposal would leave the $200,000 for the sharing, revenue sharing account.
The second recommendation that
Yes.
we've given you says we don't touch the rates at all.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of talk about, we actually adjusted the rates in '04, January of 2004, a little before I got here. But the fact is that even those rates, just for the council's information, did not get raised to the level that the Desmond Corporation, the consultant group we had hired, had recommended. Most of our parkers in downtown Lowell are under some type of a discount program. And that's really why, that those revenues are not as high as we thought they'd be. So the bottom line of the second recommendation is that we don't touch the rates. We will have to address the rates in FY10, because that's when the money starts running short again. And at that time, we'd look at all the rates and make that adjustment at that point in time. But as the manager said, that would come out of, that 200 would come out of the revenue sharing.
Thank you, Mr. Connie. One additional, how much money will the garages net the city at the end of this year?
Operating profit for the garages at the end of FY06 will be pretty close to about $2 million, Councilor, before paying debt, before the debt payments and before the revenue sharing maintenance of effort that we have.
All right, so roughly about $2 million. And what's it cost to operate the garages?
Cost us, this year it's going to cost us between security, I have that number here. Let me look at it. FY06 will be about $2.5 million, Councilor. That doesn't include the garage. That includes on-street. Garages alone would be about 2.2, 2.3.
Excuse me, let me back up, I missed that. The cost to run the garages will be did you say
roughly $2.2 million. That's for security and the operational piece.
And the 2.2 that we're going to see is the 2.2 above and beyond that?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. We'll take 4.4 million roughly in this year.
Okay. So out of the 2.2 in excess, the net to the city, how is that being divided up within the city? How much of that goes back to the garages? I know that there's a proposal last week that $500,000 goes back to the general, but where does the rest of it go? To the operator?
The plan for this year will be $300,000 of that $500,000 because we've already used $200,000 of that in maintenance of effort. But the number is normally $500,000, $216,000 for the debt for the Joy garage, $218,000 for debt for the John Street garage, and the balance of that, which is 1.1, goes into the revolving account for the parking department, which is what's the number we're planning on using to pay the debt, pay the bond for the new garage.
When does the first payment of the bond come due? Do you know?
We're actually still working on that, Councilor, but in the model that I used, we have a small payment in FY07 of $800,000, and then in FY08 we start paying the $2.2 million, which is now probably more like 2.1.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Connie.
You're welcome, Councilor.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, at this point, make known, and I do support the building of the garage for a number of reasons, and they've all been stated here tonight. And I am going to support the increase in the fines. I'm not going to support the increase in the rates. I am going to support the second recommendation that's been made by Mr. Carney. And I know the managers addressed the floor and the council regarding the 200,000, and while I appreciate that's a tall order, you've got to manage that budget, and it's going to be a tough budget. We keep talking about having to raise taxes for the 200,000. I was wondering if, Mr. Kennedy, if you could tell me, what will that mean to the taxpayer, the addition, having to raise that $200,000? What would that mean for a tax rate increase?
You really can't figure it, we don't know the valuations.
I'm sorry?
We don't know the valuations yet, so I don't know how it would affect the rate.
Okay. Well, and thank you, Mr. Kennedy. I guess I would say that before we talk about raising taxes, the budget is somewhere in excess of $270 million. Maybe we could find money to cut. It's not an easy job, but that's the job of the manager, to find and balance a budget, and there's going to be times when it's going to be difficult. So I am going to support the second recommendation, and I'd like to look at the budget before we begin to say that the sky is falling and taxes need to be raised. One last question, Mr. Mayor, one more point I'd like to make, if I may, and that is, before we have a roll call on this vote, Mr. Mayor, are we going to distinguish between the two recommendations when voting? Because it seems to me I've heard a mixture of opinions on how to pay the garage from those that are willing to go ahead with the garage and the proposed of $4.5 million.
Well, I suppose we're going to have to entertain motions from the floor as to what's going to be approved and not approved. So when time comes to vote, someone will have to make a motion to adopt a particular vote, second it, and we'll have a roll call on it. So I would imagine every opportunity is going to have its chance to be voted on here.
Okay, and if you could just make that clear at the time. I know that we're considering this ordinance, but I think we've got 2 or 3 motions as riders on top of it, and I just want to be clear about it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, one correction, maybe Councilor Ramirez didn't hear me. I said that if you use the revenue sharing, we will have $200,000 less. I did not say that necessitates a tax increase. Now, I know it's your first budget and you may not know the differences there, but that does not necessarily, and not that I say, it necessitates a tax increase. I merely said, and I want everybody to know, that if you take $200,000 out of that, it's no new money here, it's the same money we're dealing with, and we would have $200,000 less as we start off the budget process.
Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. Well, it's not my first budget, but if the rates don't pay for this, then it's got to get paid somewhere, and it's got to get paid out of the budget. Isn't that true? I mean, and that goes to the tax rate.
Well, it's clearly true, but we have not.
I know we haven't done the budget yet.
I just want to be clear. I did not say, and I want my words to be heard from me, not from other people. I did not say this necessitates a tax increase. I merely said that if you take $200,000 out of the pot, we have $200,000 less to work with, just so everybody knows that.
Right, and so if, we don't have newfound money that we know of in terms of the city, the budget goes up every year because we have raises and everything, fixed cost, energy, go up. And we don't have any huge influx of new money coming in from the state or anything like that we know of. So if we start, if the rate increase doesn't take care of this, then it's going to get put on that side of the budget, right? I mean, it's got to get paid for.
Well, as we sit here tonight, we don't know what any new monies we maybe have coming in. We don't know what the final budget numbers from the state are going to be, which is the majority of local aid. But clearly, if monies need to be, if we come up short, then clearly there'll be a recommendation.
This is where it's got to get paid
time.
for.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
Well, all I'm
saying. If the parking fines portion doesn't pass and only if the rate increase doesn't pass and just the fines passes, then whatever the rate increase would have covered, it's got to get paid out of the general fund, right? So it's not incorrect to say it could raise taxes.
I simply said, Counselor, I didn't say. it
Well,
would
no, you didn't
necessitate-
say it, but.
Okay, I just want to,
But,
that's fine. I
but
just want
you're
that
the
to be clear.
manager, so you know that if you've got to cover 300 grand more than you planned on, you know, if you don't have the money to pay for it from some other source, then it's going to raise taxes.
Possibly, correct. Yeah.
And that parking rate increase out of the 4.5 million, we didn't get a straight answer on this, but on an annual basis, the 4.5 million is going to cost somewhere around 400,000?
300,000.
300,000?
Mhm.
So, and the fines would cover, the increase in fines would cover 100,000 according to
100,000.
Mr. Carney? So
I think if Councilor Caulfield's proposal
Okay.
were to pass on the handicap, it might add another 32,000 to that.
How about Middlesex? How much are they paying us right now?
I don't know.
Mr. Carney, is he still here?
225, maybe?
How much is Middlesex Community College paying us?
I believe it's what, about 225? 225 now.
And how many students, or do we have a number on, and what the usage is?
Yes, we've done an analysis.
Yeah, well, how
on
much is that,
Middlesex.
do you know?
I don't have it with me, but
Well,
I can get that for you.
are they going to increase their rate too in any of these proposals?
Their contract is up for renewal in January of '07, Counselor, and we planned on addressing that at that point in time.
Okay, so, and what's the proposal? I mean, that's a big, you know, they're a big user, so.
Yes.
What's the proposal? Yeah, I'm just looking to, it sounds to me like a lot of people don't like to support raising the rates, but I'm just looking at one of the biggest institutional users. How much are we looking to increase their rate by?
We haven't really worked on it.
But shouldn't that be part of this plan? You know, shouldn't that be looked at, you know, this is one of the, I mean, if everybody has to pay more, why shouldn't Middlesex Community College pay more? I mean, shouldn't that be part of the plan?
I heard Mr. Carney say that their agreement is up in January of '07.
That's right.
I have
Right.
not begun to talk to Middlesex about this yet. Obviously, it's 6 months away. Are they
Yeah.
should they be part of the plan? Certainly they should be part of the plan. Everybody should be part of the plan.
Yeah, but shouldn't we have something on the table about that?
We don't.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. In terms of the CMAA building, American Heritage Foundation, when they were here last week, I heard them, maybe I'm mistaken, but do they have their funding? I thought they didn't have funding
Do they
yet.
have what?
Funding to do their project.
Their major funder is the Bank of America. What they probably said last week is one of the components of the funding is the state historic tax credits,
Yeah.
which they do have to apply for.
Yeah. But did they get approval? I thought they said they didn't. I thought
Well,
they hadn't gotten
They
their-
have applied. They do not have an award as of yet. The allocation used to be $15 million a year. It just came out of the conference committee as a proposed $50 million, which went to the House and was approved and now goes before the Senate. To answer your question, do they have an award as of today? They do not.
Okay. I mean, and presumably they'll, you know, hopefully get funding, but they're a ways off. So, you know, whether there's a garage or not, I don't see that as holding up their project. They will need parking, not because, mainly because the city's going to require they have to have parking, as with any development.
Well, one thing they did make clear last week was if there's no garage, they will not go forward on the project.
Right,
Both
but-
buildings. They
But,
made
you know,
that very
that's the
clear.
whole problem.
Yeah.
You know, developers come in and say, build us a garage. You know, for $28 million, it may be that they have to contribute to the building of it.
We just want everybody to know what's at stake here. Clearly, that's what they've told us. If there's no garage, they won't do the project.
Right. So, and being developers, I'm sure they could be brought into the discussion as to, okay, if a garage gets built, you know, again, it's not saying that there shouldn't be one, but how it's going to get paid for and bring partners in. If they need it, let them be part of the solution in terms of paying for it. But, you know, make no mistake, I mean, it may sound easy to cut $300,000 from a budget to cover this, but having sat through several budgets, it's not. The budgets come in and they're very lean, and I don't expect there's going to be a whole lot of fat in this year's budget. And when you start off the bat with better than 80% being fixed costs that you can't cut anyway, you know, there's no room to cut. So, you know, if the rates don't pass, it will be paid by the taxpayers, no doubt about it.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm understanding that if Adden Furniture has the condos in there, that'd generate $170,000 in tax revenue each year. I think that's something to look into, but my main reason for raising my hand is that I'm not supporting the second recommendation. I am in favor of supporting the first recommendation. It takes in account the second portion of a portion of the second recommendation, which is raising the rates over 6-hour rates, 6 hours that you park there. That's raising the rates there. To a raising 5 parking fines, and that would generate $100,000. The other, raising the 6-hourly rate, would be another $12,000. So that's included in recommendation 2. It's also in recommendation 1. But the thing that I like is that the council will not raise the downtown resident rates, and that's what I'm supporting. I know we need to raise the rates. I'm not in favor of raising it for the downtown residents, and I'll say that we built it and they came and they bit, so to speak, and now we're holding them hostage. I don't think that's fair. So I'm not supporting the second recommendation. I'm supporting the first.
Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Carney, if I could, Mr. Carney. Mr. Carney, how do we police the usage from hotel patrons at the present time? I know that years ago there was a contract with the hotel where that if you got just your card or your pass card validated, you didn't have to pay. Are we able to police that in any way? Meaning that I know people, as an example, that go to the auditorium for a show and they're walking back to the garage, they walk through the hotel and they get there, well, I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong, but are we losing revenue as a result of that if we're not policing it?
Quite frankly, Councilor, it's very difficult to police. I mean, we have the city has had a contract with the DoubleTree forever, a lifetime contract that basically gives them the ability to validate customers to the hotel. And what we've done on probably every 4-month basis as the management has changed with that hotel is we've insisted that there be someone there that works for the hotel that actually does that validating. And by the way, that's the same system we've set up with Middlesex Community College, where their security officers are supposed to be the only ones allowed to validate those tickets. And they've both been a problem, Council. To be honest with you, it's very difficult to police, but that's the only way we could possibly control it.
Can we have them put with a validated sticker a copy of I suppose you couldn't do this, but I was going to say a copy of a receipt that they actually were at the hotel?
But even if there's an event at the hotel, they get validated as well, Council.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's really what we're dealing with there.
Okay.
The only way would be we'd have to go back and take a look at the contract and make a change there.
Thank you.
Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. Mr. Carney, one more second, please. I'm not sure if you have a printout, but you were mentioning that this year, what will the net revenue be, or cumulative net revenue be for the garages at the end of FY06?
For just the garages?
Yes. In this fund, in the parking fund, whatever, I'm not sure what you referred to.
Well, the parking plan, which would be the garages and off-street for 06, is $4,400,000.
Okay, just the garages then?
Just the garages would be $3,100,000.
Okay. And if we don't raise the rates, it'll run at a deficit, correct?
Yeah. Well, as I said, Council, right now we're running ahead because we're not paying the bond. Whatever we collect ahead now would go towards the bond as the bond payments became due.
All right. If we do not increase the rates in the garages, next year we'll have less in the fund, correct?
That's right.
And you said FY10 is when we would have to adjust the rates to cover the...
Right. That's when we basically take all the money out of the bank that we've generated.
Okay.
And it would be in 10 where we really start to get to a negative number.
All right. Now, included in that pay down, if you will, of what we have as an asset, does that include the money, the revenue that we've been paying to the city? Or is that taking that out also?
My recommendation too took it out. I assumed we'd get the $200,000. Without the money from, if we didn't do anything, is that basically your question, if we didn't take the money?
If we still did the revenue sharing with the city,
Yeah.
when would we run out of money in the fund if we don't increase the rates?
FY9,
So we could still,
FY09.
so we could
FY09,
still,
we basically have spent everything we've saved without any increase in revenues.
and that would be still with the revenue sharing to the city, we'd still have 3 years.
Right. Yep.
Thank you.
Councilor Armin Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems to me that we ought to actually move the question on the rescinding of the award, both by Councilor Elliott and Councilor Eileen Donoghue. And if that passes, then we'll deal with how it's to be paid. There's no doubt in my mind it's going to be paid one way or the other if that
Point of
rescinding
order.
motion.
Councilor
Point
Donahue.
of order, the only motion on to rescind the 4.5 was my motion, and that is only in the event the rates don't get passed.
Well-
So it's moot. If the council
Right.
approves the rate increase, then
Yeah.
my motion's moot.
No, what I'm saying is that if the motion that we're discussing, which is rescinding that vote, fails, then we got to deal with how it gets paid. And there's no doubt in my mind it's going to get paid
No.
one way or the other.
That isn't the
So if you
motion.
want to,
That
well,
isn't the
that's
the
the
motion.
motion. Isn't that the motion before
No,
us?
the only
mo-
motion to rescind is, as I stated at the outset of the meeting, I filed a motion to rescind the 4.5 million in the event the council doesn't approve the rate increase.
Okay.
That's all.
That's not
So-
what it says here. That's why I'm...
I know it doesn't say it here, but that's what I asked the clerk to put on, and that's why I corrected it when it was read here tonight. So that's the motion. So the order has to be that you vote whatever way the council goes on the rates. If the rates don't pass, then the order should be to consider rescission.
Well, then I move that we go with the proposal for the rate increase.
Okay. Well, I think
whatever.
we should proceed. I agree. This has been thoroughly debated. There are two more councilors with their hands up who've said relatively little, I think. Councilor Caulfield?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Before we take a vote on the rates, the parking fine rates, I have a motion before you. $300 is the maximum in the state. Every community charges $300 for a handicap parking fine except the city of Lowell. And it's done throughout the entire state, so that's the motion I have before you. If you're going to improve the rates, I'd like to see that as $300 rather than $200.
Well, let me we have two ordinances here. They were advertised for public hearings. They were read and approved. I think the motion may require additional advertisement. I take
Right.
guidance from the solicitor on that.
Right.
I mean, we have two ordinances. If there's a desire to amend either one of them, what's the procedure for that?
It would depend on the nature of the amendment. There has been an amount of advertising that has taken place indicating that there would be an potential increase in the rates and charges as well as in the fines. If there is some sort of minimal change to the ordinance, or if part of the ordinance isn't passed and other sections are passed, then I do not believe that we would need any further advertisement.
Well, let's take that example. I mean, this ordinance of fine increases, Councilor Caulfield has a motion to increase the handicap violation from 200 to 300. It's actually now 100 to 200. Is that of the nature that could be entertained by way of amendment?
Sorry to interrupt. I don't think that would be a substantial change to the ordinance at all.
Okay. Now, on the second question, though, the first ordinance that we're about to vote on, I think, that is the whole parking rate increase. It doesn't exempt residents. It's all or nothing, the way I read this one.
Mm-hmm.
So if there were a revision to come back to really only increase the non-resident rates, would that require further advertising in your view?
Actually, if, the way the ordinance is before the council, if the council decided to exempt a certain portion of rate users from the ordinance, it arguably also would not be a substantial change from the ordinance. You merely wouldn't be adopting one part of that ordinance. I can't give you a 100%
Okay.
on that. It's sort of a judgment call, and that would be my judgment on it.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the discussion here tonight really should serve as a perfect example why we shouldn't go forward with this plan. And I've listened to the discussion, and I do think there are valid points all the way around. But there are so many unanswered questions. There are more ideas that have even been thrown out tonight to look at. And I don't think it hurts to go back to the drawing board. I don't think it hurts to take another look at it. I don't think it's being regressive. I don't think it's not going forward. I'd rather make, I'd rather make, maybe it'll take us another year mistake rather than make a financial commitment that is, in my opinion, going to financially strap this budget this year and the next 20 years for a project that we simply cannot afford. Doesn't mean we want to do it, but we just can't afford it. And I agree, if you don't go ahead and build a house, as Councilor Mercia said, knowing that you need X amount of rooms and then you got to build on that, of course it's going to cost a lot. But by the same token, we don't need 900 spaces right now. I don't even know what number we need. But I do know that maybe we do have to go back to the drawing board. Maybe we do have to cut costs. I don't think that's a failure. And I think that's important to point out. I don't agree with the plan, but I will say one thing about the manager. He's presented the 4.5 million increase. He's taken a position and he's telling us, look it, you got to vote for the rate increase to pay for this. You can't take it out of the revenue sharing because that's only going to hurt the tax rate, and we're already in a very tight fiscal year. So the recommendation is not to vote for one, fine increase and not the rate increase. Shift it on the businesses that don't live in town. Don't, put it on the people that live in the city. The recommendation is to raise the rates. And by the way, the recommendation that is being, I think, discussed here, that we're going to raise the parking fines and fees and just raise the rate on those individuals that don't live in town, there's also a notation that says, guess what, we're going to revisit this in 4 more years. So it's not a sound financial plan. I don't think there's a bank in this city or in this country that would lend a nickel under these conditions. I truly don't. It's not a sound plan as far as I'm concerned. There's been so many questions tonight to reflect that. I have my own questions, and I know Mr. Carney's getting his share of exercise up here tonight, but I do just have a couple of questions, Mr. Carney, if you'd be so kind. And I do have the information, but these numbers, they don't add up to me. If we're going to pay for what is now a $2.15 million, $2.2 million addition to the current to the current profit in this account activity. You say this year we'll have a balance of 1.27. Excuse me, you said a little over 2 million, but you did say that does not include revenue sharing and debt service, which is factored into this. That's an additional $733,000. So take that off the top. So you don't have 2 million to start with. You got 1.127. If you factor in the increase of, let's take even if you raise the rates on everybody, that's only an additional 285,000 plus an additional 200,000, which is not even on the table. What's on the table is an additional 300,000. So my math tells me that we're looking at an additional 1.5. We get a 2.2 note to crack for 20 years. We're not going to cover it. We're operating on the margin. That doesn't include any other I'm sorry, I asked you up for questions, but, I mean, that's my math. I mean, am I missing something here? The proposal being discussed is an additional 300,000 that we got to revisit again in 4 years, adding that to the 1.127. There's $700,000 shortfall unless I'm missing something.
The problem, Counselor, if I may, is, and I'd be glad to take you through the plan in detail, but as I said earlier, what we're doing is we're saving money on the front end, all right? So that's not a net when you get out to the further months of how much money we need, all right? So you've got roughly almost $2 million in the bank coming out of FY06, which we will use as the bond payment comes on. And that's why I said in FY10, FY11, we're going to have to look at adjusting the rates, because the operation does not support the revenue. You're absolutely correct.
Thank you.
All right? And that's why I
appreciate
said we're going to have to readdress the rates in FY10 and 11.
I agree, and that's, again, that just tells me that it's not financially sound. I know we all want to go forward with it, but we don't know where we are fiscally in this budget yet. This is just going to add a great burden to something that we don't need. I think we're rushing to judgment, and that doesn't mean that we don't want to do it. And I don't understand why, adding furniture, I mean, why should we build, and I understand their position, they want to make money. Why should the city, and ratepayers or taxpayers, and please make no mistake, if this rate increase does not pass tonight, you may save money, folks downtown, living downtown, you may save X amount of dollars per month, but it's going right on the tax rate, and you'll be paying for it with your real estate taxes. I am absolutely convinced of that. So, we can say that, we don't want to lose the people downtown to vote for us, so we're not going to raise their rates. We're going to tax the businesses, which we need downtown. This is not good economic development, in my opinion. You can't say you're for economic development and then raise the cost of doing businesses downtown. So I think the intent, I support it, is a good idea. I don't think this is a good plan. I think that we can do better, and I hope we do. I urge my colleagues to, let's take a second look at this. We can go back to the drawing board, look at some options. Why can't the developers pitch in? Maybe they don't want to. I don't disagree, Mr. Manager, that right off the bat they're saying, well, look, we're not going to, we can't afford $33,000 or $31,000 per space. Well, that's unfortunate. Maybe they have to. Maybe that's part of their, that's part of the plan that they have to incorporate. So, those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Manager. I know we can do better, and maybe it'll take a little bit of time, but I think we should just take a look at it. So,
if I may, Mr. Manager,
Thank you, Mr.
just for clarification, Counselor, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I understand nobody likes to raise rates or whatever else, but I think the plan that I put forth is sound physically. Obviously, the plan I've put forth covers the rate. So I understand what you're saying about flipping things around and whatever else, but clearly the plan that was supported by the subcommittee, I think was sound fiscally, because it did, in fact, have a revenue stream to cover the added cost. I mean, not like the revenue stream, but it was there.
Well, right, but, I guess that doesn't, you're right, it covers the cost of the garage, but, it also doesn't include, it doesn't factor in cost of living increases for whatever is in that expense budget. So, I understand your point, but I still think we're operating too close to the margin, and, it's a shell game here tonight. People want a garage, they don't want to, charge the ratepayers downtown that live here an amount, but we want to put on the businesses, and it's just not adding up, and I think there's too much financial uncertainty, and we need a more comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Okay, so the ordinance before us is the ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, respect to Chapter 13 thereof, entitled Motor Vehicles and Traffic, pertaining to the schedule of parking rates for parking. This is the parking rate increase, not the fine increase. That's the first vote. All of the rate increases are in this ordinance together. So that, unless there's an amendment that's approved, is the vote. The vote on the parking rate increase.
Mr. Mayor, just
Yes.
one clarification. Are you going on recommendation number 1 to the manager? To exempt the residents downtown? Is that what you're going on?
No, that's not the ordinance. that's not the ordinance. The ordinance is for the full rate increase.
Okay.
Roll call?
Counselor Caulfield?
No.
Counselor Donahue?
No.
Counselor Elliott?
No.
Mayor Martin?
No.
Counselor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Rita Mercia?
No.
Counselor Milonazo?
No.
Counselor Ramirez?
No.
Counselor Broderick?
No.
Okay, 8 opposed, I think. 1 approved, so that ordinance to increase the rates fails. The next ordinance is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, with respect to Chapter 13 thereof, entitled Motor Vehicles and Traffic Pertaining to the Schedule of Parking Fines. This is the fine ordinance. Counselor, I believe you wanted to make an amendment to this?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I brought a motion forward to increase the handicap parking from $100 to $300. That's the statute in this Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and that's what all communities are charging throughout the Commonwealth.
Okay, so there is a motion to amend the ordinance on the second page to increase the fine for handicap parking from $200 to $300.
Second.
Second by Councilor Armin Mercier. Roll call on the amendment, and then we'll vote the ordinance.
Right.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue?
No.
Counselor Elliott?
Can I get a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor? This is the vote, the latest, an increase for handicap, for those violators in handicap parking?
From 100 to 300 as opposed to 100 to 200.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to support that.
Mayor Martin?
No.
Counselor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Ramirez?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Okay, so that amendment passes, and now the vote on the ordinance as amended.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
when do we take, or is it too late now, to take the recommendation 1 as proposed by the parking director, or recommendation 2?
It's
Failed.
not before us.
It failed.
How do we get it brought back again and have it, we have recommendations, but you're strictly going by the ordinance without amending it?
That's what was advertised.
Well, it was advertised.
That's the vote, Counselor.
Right,
I mean,
I understand that, but later on, can we then, next week, in a timely fashion, bring back each recommendation in the form of an ordinance and vote on it? Therefore, we will have a way to pay for the garage?
yes, that can be entertained. As I read the discussion here tonight, there's not support for that either, but certainly that can come back to the council for a vote.
Well, I heard Councilor Ramirez make a motion for the recommendation 2. I didn't hear a second, but were you asking for one? Because I'm making a motion for the first recommendation.
It's already done.
I thought I clearly said, this is the vote unless there's an amendment. There was no amendment offered.
Council Mercier, I didn't amend it.
I thought you needed to re-advertise.
Well, we asked the solicitor. She said it would be possible to
Right,
strip
it
out
would
the
be
residents.
possible, it wouldn't be possible, it would be possible. There's so much confusion here that I'm willing to entertain a motion to bring the recommendation 1 in so that because if we don't go anything further, we're going to be voting no against a garage because there's no way to pay for it. I don't approve of that. I think there is a way to pay for it. I think the recommendations, whether it be 1 or 2, I strictly support 1, though, should be brought forward and seconded and an ordinance be drafted to support these changes.
I agree with Councilor Mercier on this issue, because I asked that question, Mr. Mayor. What are we voting on?
And I thought I answered it, Counselor. I mean, I think, you're certainly entitled to file a motion to reconsider.
Right, then I'll file a motion to reconsider.
And I think that's
make
the
the
proper
proper
avenue at this
recommendation.
point.
Then make the proper amendment to that ordinance. I'll file a reconsideration vote on that.
Could I just have a little clarification here? Anyone can file a motion to reconsider. That's only to reconsider the vote you took.
Right.
It's not to amend it.
Right.
Am I right? I mean, let's...
Yes, to bring it back to
we can't
reconsider.
have everything here, okay? there was a motion to defeat the way to fund the proposed garage. Now, if there's a better way to fund it, there's gonna be a brand-new ordinance. You just can't reconsider what was just passed. Am I right?
Then I'm asking for a brand-new ordinance.
Okay, so, but it's not a reconsideration.
Well, then I'm asking for a brand-new ordinance.
So that would have to be filed separately. But at
That's
this point...
that's
is it
certainly
my
possible to do, Counsel.
Right, is it my understanding that if we were to move now on the garage, to move forward, not rescind it, moving forward, the only way that would be paid for would be through the taxpayers, because the rate was defeated. Is that...
The rate was defeated. We're in the middle
Right.
of the vote to adopt the fine increase, so it'll
Okay,
be partially
that'll
funded.
make a difference. Okay.
So
Thank you.
I think the
Yeah.
manager's recommendation is about $200,000 short.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so roll call on the ordinance to raise the fines as amended.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue?
No.
Counselor Elliott?
No.
Mayor Martin?
No.
Counselor Armin Mercia?
Yes,
Counselor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Ramirez?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
So 6 yeas, 3 nays, the ordinance to increase the fines is approved. Okay, now on the motions, I guess the first motion is the joint motion by Counselor Elliott and Donahue.
I think the solicitor's reported already on that.
Yeah, I
So-
think she's reported, so we can just accept
So
the
that
report.
does not require a vote. So the next motion is Counselor Donahue's motion to rescind the vote for the loan order of $4.5 million. Counselor Donahue.
Just briefly, again, the intent of this motion is that we have not properly funded or authorized funding to pay for the increased 4.5 million. The problem we have is there's a 20-day window from when the 4.5 million was approved, and we're on day 15, I believe. So we don't have the time to play with on this. And the concern I have is that if we don't rescind the 4.5 million tonight, it will be paid for on the tax rate. And that's the problem, because the parking rate increase wasn't approved. I'm asking the council to rescind the vote. I believe that there's been no contract signed, and that it would be considered an unfunded bond in terms of the 4.5 million, and go back to the drawing board. I'm not saying throw it out the window, but buy time here, because if we don't do this, the 20 days is going to be up before our next meeting, and we don't have any time. If we rescind it now, we can buy time to answer some of these questions. That's the whole intent. The intent is not to kill the garage deal. The intent is to buy more time to get answers to this, to figure out how we're going to pay for it. Do we scale it back, or do we come up with another revenue source? That's the whole intent. If we do nothing tonight in terms of the rescission, then the 4.5 million, we have to act, the 20-day period, appeal period will have run, and it's going to be on the tax rate, with the exception of the rating, the fine increase. That's it. That's it. And so, you know, when we voted on it 2 weeks ago, but we didn't figure out how to pay for it, we still have the same problem tonight. That's a big problem. I just think it's prudent for us to rescind it now, just to buy ourselves some time to come back to the drawing board, whether it's a new ordinance that Councilor Mercier is talking about, whether there's another revenue stream. But if we don't do that, we got to pay for it. It's as simple as that. That's my concern.
Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Didn't Mr. Carney indicate that there was enough money in the parking department budget through FY09 to satisfy this $4.5 million? Did I misunderstand that? I mean, I thought that's what I heard him say, through FY09. Again, with all due respect to Councilor Donahue, it appears to me that there is, at least for the next 2 or 3 fiscal years, enough money to...
Sorry, Councilor, I didn't hear your question.
About there's enough money in the parking department budget through FY09 to fund this parking garage, to fund the debt service on the parking garage. Is that correct?
That's correct. If we do nothing.
Okay.
Right.
But, Mr. Mayor, the problem is, though, we use that money. I mean, Mr. Manager, that money the money that we've taken from parking garages has been used and figured into the local budget, hasn't it? I mean, when you build your budget, you look to that money to use.
Yes,
So,
correct.
so if we're using it to pay, I mean, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If we use it to pay the bond, then we don't have it for what we would have, I mean, you would have used it. You wouldn't have just put it away in a piggy bank, obviously. So, you know,
Correct. No, that's correct, Counselor.
that's the only problem. I mean, there's just no extra money.
Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Carney, I think I had asked him that question where that would, the savings, if you will, in that account would run out in FY '09, provided we continue to pay into the general fund? Isn't that true? So we could continue to fund...
Is in that assumption, Councilor, yes.
I'm sorry?
The paying into the general fund is in that assumption.
It is.
Yeah,
So-
the number I gave you, we run out of money in '09, basically says we just don't do anything with anything. We don't raise the rates, we continue to pay the revenue sharing. And in '09, the operation starts, actually '08, we start losing money. We go to a negative of about $1 million because we're paying that $2.2 million in debt.
Okay, and in the interim, we could look at Middlesex Community College in tightening up at the hotel and the college as well, and increase any tax revenue that may come on?
Yes, we're constantly looking at the operations.
As well as a rate increase in another 2 years or 3 years, which would be 5 years since the last one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Matt, could you please come to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Matt, I'm going to present two scenarios to you. This $4.5 million bond, if this fails tonight, what happens to the garage?
Well, I guess if the authorization is rescinded, then we cannot proceed with a contract with Consigli. So our only option then would either be to abandon the project as a whole or to, in fact, go back and ask Parsons Brinkerhoff to redesign the garage and attempt to bid it again. Those would be the two options.
If you went back to the drafting board and redesigned the garage, what's the cost of that?
To be honest, Councilor, I'd be guessing off the top of my head, but I would say maybe another 20% on top of what we have paid. The design contract is just about $900,000.
How much?
The design contract was at $900,000, so I'm going to guess maybe somewhere around $150,000 to $180,000.
Okay. And if you don't get this $4.5 million, you have to scale the garage down drastically, I imagine?
Yes, that would be the assumption.
How many floors you're talking about eliminating?
Well, right now, the structure is slated to be 5 stories for 900 spaces. I suppose if we were trying to be comparable...
1/3.
If I was going to say, if we were going to try to be comparable to, say, UMass's structure, then yes, we'd be reducing approximately 1/3 of the garage.
1/3 of the garage?
So 2 floors would be taking off.
Right. And I agree with you. The cost of the garage, the bulk of the garage, is in the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Once you put the foundation in, the floors just could be added as you need them. But if you don't get this bond issue, 1/3 of the garage would disappear.
That would certainly, the assumption would be that you would drastically reduce the size of the structure itself.
So instead of 900
presumably by a
parking spots,
third.
you'd have 600.
That would certainly be one way to try to rebid it, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything further? Councilor Elliott?
That's the best idea I've heard all night, I think, is to build what we need. I supported this parking plan back in '04 because it addressed a lot of inadequacies that we had at that time. And one of them was financial. There's just been a vote not to fund this bond. How much sense does that make to anyone? So now we're going to, I take that we've already funded it. This vote is to rescind it. There's no way to pay for it. How do you build something without paying for it? Just tell the people at home watching that it's going right on their tax rate, because that's where it's going, because there's no way else to pay for it. Mr. Carney indicated, well, there's enough money maybe to make it through '09. Maybe there is, but we haven't even seen that, quite frankly. He has provided us some information. But that's not a way to go. I mean, bond counsel will be looking at that saying, that makes no sense. That's more of a risk. Your bond rating is going down. I just can't believe we're embarking on this project with so much uncertainty. It boggles my mind that we're willing to just go forward and not think about the consequences in the future, because that's what it's about. And we're not even into the budget season. So it's just not a way a business would run. You don't say I'm going to spend X amount of dollars without knowing where it's coming from. And then we're going to be in arrears. We're going to be right back to where we were. All of the deficit's going to be right back on the tax rate, which is, I think, going to be a very challenging year, and we're looking at some tough decisions. We've been in a hiring freeze for quite some time. We had a free cash shortfall last year. It's going to even be less this year. We don't know what's coming from Beacon Hill. It's not the increases that we need. There are contracts in place that have to be funded. We have rising health insurance costs. We have rising utility costs. And we're moving forward on a garage that we just simply cannot afford. I think it's a serious mistake, and we need to take another look at this and continue on the path, because there's only one place for it to go now, and that's a tax rate increase, and a significant one. And I just want to go on the record to state that while we haven't seen the budget yet, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know where our costs are increasing. We've been following them every week, and there's no place, and there's not enough money coming in, and we're not going to see this huge influx of money from the state. So that's my opinion. That's why I'm going to support this rescission. Let's go back. Let's take another look at it. We can come back in the near future. Is it going to cost us a little bit more? I'd rather have it cost us a little bit more than put us in a real financial bind for 20 years. Thank you.
Okay, roll call on the vote to rescind the loan order.
Counselor Caulfield?
No.
Counselor Donahue?
Yes.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Armin Mercia?
No.
Counselor Rita Mercia?
No.
Counselor Milonazo?
No.
Counselor Ramirez?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
No.
5-4, the motion is defeated.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Be that as it may that the motion was defeated, there is a revenue stream that could be acceptable, and if I wait until next Tuesday to file it, the 20 days will be over and it'll be null and void. So I'd like to suspend the rules to bring in the motion that I would have brought next week, which is to instruct the manager to have the law department draft an amended ordinance, Chapter 13, increase rates and charges for parking and parking facility, as recommended by the parking director in proposal number 1. And I'd like to do that, if I could, through you to the solicitor.
Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Okay. Roll call.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue?
No.
Counselor Elliott?
No.
Mayor Martin?
The motion fails. The motion
Need to go
fails.
any further.
There's only 2 votes, 2 noes.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the first thing that I said about putting the wrench into the spokes has just occurred. I hope I could look forward to seeing an editorial tomorrow regarding how we didn't live up to our promise, as the 3 of us did, when we didn't support that proposal in the acre.
Okay, the next, Councilor Elliott.
Well, the motion failed, so. Would that not require a public hearing anyway,
Yes.
Madam Solicitor? That motion?
Yes.
So we wouldn't achieve anything tonight by,
As far as the time, the motion to rescind the loan order has already failed. So at this point, at any time, the council can bring back before this body a motion to have the parking rates ordinance adopted as amended by either, option number 1 or option number 2, or in some other fashion. The time limit only applied to the loan order. It doesn't apply, obviously, to to the actual ordinances themselves. So you could bring them back. It is a question, and I'm sorry I don't have a definite answer. I don't think there is necessarily a definite answer to give, but it is quite possible that had the original ordinance been amended, that there would have been no need for a re-advertisement for that ordinance. But in this case, the facts have changed. That ordinance was defeated, and essentially would be looking to bring forth a new ordinance. But again, time.
Well, then I can file it for next Tuesday
Correct.
then.
Right.
Fine,
Well,
thank you.
Madam Solicitor, wouldn't you argue that was a substantial change to what was advertised in the newspaper? And if that is the case, we've been told time and time again, that's
It's-
not permissible to be amended.
Right.
Right, you can't substantially change an ordinance.
That's a
Once it's-
substantial change.
Once it's been advertised. In this case, first of all, the issue is moot. I mean, it's just gone now. But in this particular case, the reason I think it arguably would not necessarily have needed re-advertisement is that it was substantially the same ordinance, only you were pulling out a group of people to which they would have been exempt from the ordinance. Again, you can disagree, but it's a moot issue now anyway. It's really not going to matter.
Well, it's not a moot issue because Council Mercia wanted to amend it, and you're...
But she couldn't amend it once the ordinance failed. The only thing that you could then reconsider was the ordinance that had failed.
Right. I mean, the issue's passed, it's been voted.
Right.
We got a big agenda here. I suggest we move on.
Can I just get a clarification, Mr. Mayor? It's my understanding that we are going to build a garage. It's also my understanding we just don't know quite how we're going to pay for it right now. And so people can come in, the administration, the city councils, with some suggestions for a revenue stream to build a garage that doesn't land on the taxpayers.
That's
They could
correct.
come in. Okay,
Correct.
and I think this is what Councilor Mercia is going to be attempting to do at a later date, and you're right, there needs to be a public hearing, and, but we are at least going to build that garage. It's just a question of how we're going to pay for it.
Well,
Is that right?
Yeah, right
only
now, the
one way to pay.
taxpayers
Right now,
are going to pay
yeah.
for it. It's on the tax rate. It's as simple as that. It's going to raise taxes to build it.
Unless
Now,
someone comes in, Mr. Mayor, with a creative revenue stream through the user increase rates, which is not really off the table. It was defeated as proposed.
Right.
But it could be changed. But
Could be
that's-
changed and brought back. You're right.
Right.
That's
But
all I wanted to clarify.
All right. Okay. The public hearings, there is one public hearing on from Keyspan Energy, requests gas mains in Belmont, 17th, Beaver, Parker, and Chelmsford Streets. Okay. Open the public hearing for anybody wishing to speak in favor. Anybody from Keyspan?
Kevin Clark from Keyspan. Keyspan's requesting the installation of gas mains on the listed streets, its replacements to upgrade the system.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor? In favor. That portion of the public hearing is closed. Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval.
Motion to approve by Councilor Armin Mercier, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercier. Roll call, please.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue?
yes.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Ramirez? Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
8 yeas, the matter is approved. Thank you. Councilor Rita Mercier.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a little surprise for us. I hope we can be a little bit lenient with this gentleman, but I picked this particular time, and I'd like to suspend the rules so that I could allow this gentleman to come forward for just a few minutes. I think once you find out who he is, it'll be all right, but I know that we're always going after the messenger when we deal with National Grid, so I have invited the key account manager, John Upham. Remember the name Upham from National Grid. And I think it's a good faith effort that he called my house and we spoke. And I know that he'd be willing to come to the council meeting as he said he would, and he has kept his word. I told him to be here at 7. I didn't know that we would keep them another hour, but Mr. Upham, if you want to come to the...
Any objection to suspending the rules to hear from Mr. Upham? Hearing none, Mr. Upham, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, the City Manager, the Council. I understand last week we had an employee here to propose some petitions before you, and you were very upset with the performance you've seen from National Grid. I'm not here to make excuses about what has happened in the past. I'm here to say that I'm here to address what's going to happen going forward. At the suggestion of Assistant City Manager, Mr. McCarthy, he already suggested we start patrolling. Earlier in April, we started doing some patrols for streetlights that were not functioning properly. We have 30 we know right now, and those controls are going to continue. As well, Assistant City Manager McCarthy and I have scheduled a meeting later for this week to review all the proposals that you proposed motions for before the council, and to check to see if they are not completed. We will work on a timeline as to when they are going to be completed. That is not going to be just a one-time meeting and go away. Mr. McCarthy and I are going to meet on a regular basis to review those, so you'll be able to get status on what's happening. Between the Assistant City Manager and I, we want to eliminate this problem so we do not have this problem going forward anymore. I would entertain any questions, if it's okay with the Mayor, at any time from anybody.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John, I want to thank you for calling my home. My wife and I were in Boston for medical reasons, and so I didn't return your call, but I want to thank you for calling. And I appreciate you working with T.J. McCarthy and the council to address the issues we have before you. Thank you.
I can assure you these issues will be addressed.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry to keep you waiting.
That's okay.
Okay, under the city manager's portion of the agenda, we have 2 requests for out-of-state travel. Any objection to take them both together?
Move approval.
Hearing none, what's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Motion to approve by Councilor Rita Mercia, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Okay, that matter is approved. The next motion under the city manager's portion of the agenda is a vote authorizing the approval and submission of the federal fiscal year 2006 City of Lowell Annual Action Plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Request a motion to waive the full reading of this. The
So moved.
the proposal goes on for some hundreds of pages. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Donahue. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion's adopted. Second reading by title, a vote authorizing the approval and submission of the federal fiscal year 2006 City of Lowell Annual Action Plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Matter's approved. The next motion is the next matter is an appropriation transfer in order to meet fixed charges and current expenses in the City of Lowell for the year 2005-2006, ordered by the City Council as follows: that the amount of $2,000 is hereby appropriated to Council on Aging maintenance supplies in the amount of $1,000, and to Council on Aging office supplies in the amount of $1,000, for a total of $2,000. And in order to provide for such appropriation, the above amount is transferred for said purpose from Council on Aging Home Care Elder Services in the amount of $2,000. Order recommended introduced by John F. Cox, City Manager. Motion to approve by Councilor Rita Mercia, seconded by Councilor Milonazo. Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
9 yeas approved. The next matter is an order to meet appropriation transfer in order to meet fixed charges and current expenses in the City of Lowell for the year 2005-2006. Be it ordered as follows: the amount of $19,500 is hereby appropriated to Parks and Recreation leasing equipment and service, and in order to provide for such appropriation, the amount is hereby transferred for said purpose from Parks and Recreation salary and wages permanent, the amount of $19,500, to provide additional funds for purchase of a lawn tractor to replace a 1988 lawn tractor. It's the wish of the council. Motion to approve by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. Roll call, please.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue? Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Ramirez?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Next matter is an appropriation transfer to meet fixed charges and current expenses in the city of Lowell for the year 2005-2006. Be it ordered by the City Council, the amount of $92,000 is hereby appropriated to fire, salaries and wages overtime in the amount of $50,000, fire, electricity in the amount of $7,000, fire, the amount of heating in the amount of $20,000, and fire, gasoline, and motor oil in the amount of $15,000 for a total of $92,000. And in order to provide for such appropriation, the above amount is hereby transferred for said purpose from fire, salaries and wages, buyback sick leave, $10,000, fire, salaries and wages, buyback vacation, $54,000, fire, salaries and wages, apparatus detail, $11,000, fire, salaries and wages, holiday overtime, $10,000, fire, salaries and wages, out of grade compensation, $7,000, for a total of $92,000 to provide for unanticipated increases. Second reading by title, and appropriation transfer in the amount of $92,000. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Donahue.
What were the unanticipated increases for? Was it, do we know?
There was some in overtime, and obviously electricity, heating, and
So
gasoline.
like energy costs?
Yes.
The energy stuff?
Energy cost is about half of this, correct?
Move for approval.
Motion approved by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Roll call.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue?
Yes.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Armin Mercia? Yes. Counselor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Ramirez?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
The next item is an appropriation transfer in order to meet fixed charges and current expenses in the city of Lowell for the year 2005-2006. Ordered by the Lowell City Council as follows. The amount of $13,800 is hereby appropriated to treasurer salaries and wages overtime in the amount of $5,000, treasurer transportation $800, and treasurer postage the amount of $8,000 for a total of $13,800. And in order to provide for such appropriation, the amount is transferred for said purpose from treasurer salaries and wages temporary, the amount of $10,948, treasurer binding and printing $2,052, and treasurer tax title $800 for a total of $13,800 to provide for additional postage due to increased mailings, additional transportation due to increases in transportation rates, and overtime necessary to prepare cash reconciliations. Second reading by title, in order to meet fixed charges and current expenses in the city of Lowell for 2005-2006 in the Treasurer's Department, $13,800. What's the wish of the council? Motion to approve by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Roll call, please.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue?
Yes.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Armin Mercia? Yes. Counselor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Ramirez?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
9 yeas approved. Any subcommittee reports? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to the motions. The first two motions have been addressed. The next motion is by Councilor Caulfield and Councilor Rita Mercia. The City Council requests the City Manager have the Law Department not record the order of taken for the Lechulis property. Seconded by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercia. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe it was 2 weeks ago when the council voted to take Mr. Lechulis' property by eminent domain and have a window of 30 days. And I, for one, from the get-go, was against the eminent domain proceedings, and I asked for some clarification that night, and it still wasn't clear to me. It still isn't clear to me now, but I believe Council Alma Mercia and Council Rita Mercia feel the same as I do, that we want to go on record as not supporting an eminent domain proceeding against Mr. LaChulis. And that's the gist of the motion. And that's why I filed this motion. I went to the law department and asked for the proper verbiage in the motion. So that's the motion before you. And would just like to have it clarified that I, for one, am not in favor of eminent domain proceedings against Mr. LaChulis.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, feel the same way. But I thought it was rather a funny type of a vote that after 30 days, it automatically went in that we would be taking that property by eminent domain. But I felt that where Councilor Mercia said, let's separate the properties and leave LaChulis as separate, that we would have had our chance to vote no for eminent domain taken at that time. So I didn't question it. But it is my understanding that on a vote on eminent domain taking, that technically the vote only becomes legal and binding when it is recorded with the Registry of Deeds. Then the property becomes the city's only after it's recorded. Is that a true statement through you, Mr. Mayor, to the city solicitor?
That's correct, Councilor.
So I'm assuming 30 days isn't here. We didn't record the vote down to the registry. So at that, could we have a clarification as to what did we do last week? Because the week
It was
before,
more than
My-
last week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks ago, or
Well,
whatever.
I would check the minutes, but my memory is we voted to take the properties by eminent domain and not to record the order for 30 days.
Right,
And
Only
and during that,
because you only have 30 days.
To,
not-
only with respect to the LaChulis
So
property. right?
let's say 30 days pass and we record it with the registrar. That means that we're taking it by eminent domain.
Yes.
Well, that's not what the three of us wish to be recorded as. We wish to be
But you
recorded
voted
as.
against it, didn't you?
But I thought we were separating that question. Separating the properties, and LaChulis would be, separately, so that we could have voted no.
No.
Well-
The
So
solicitor's
what-
asking
The
you
other
to-
takings have been recorded, right?
Right.
Wasn't that
Yes.
the vote?
Yeah.
they-
The vote was to record the other land takings and wait 30 days for this one.
But there's no vote coming back before us.
No, because you
No.
voted.
Right.
But
Right,
we
the
are
only
recorded
action-
as no.
All right.
You already voted no.
But we want clarification. I know what I voted, but I want some, there was no clarification the night of the vote, Mr. Mayor. And I believe Armin Mercia asked for some clarification, have the vote divided, the question divided, and that never happened.
Yes,
Yeah,
Well, we'll vote the motion.
I thought the question
No.
was
We'll
divided.
vote your
It was
motion.
divided.
I mean,
If I
it
could-
was
Mr.
clear
Mayor,
to
the
me.
solicitor-
Okay, through you to the solicitor.
Well, let's go through the mayor here.
Madam Solicitor,
right, and you can check the minutes. My recollection of what occurred was that there was a vote of eminent domain taking on all three parcels. There was, however, a distinction made with the LaChulis parcel, and that was that the LaChulis parcel, despite the vote for the eminent domain taking, would not be recorded for 30 days, and that during that 30 days, because there was another proposal before the city, that the manager would continue negotiating or try to come to some sort of a resolution with LaChulis's attorneys. Thus far, that hasn't happened, and the manager might be able to expand on that even further. In fact, it most likely won't happen in the 30 days. As a result, at the end of the 30 days, as the vote currently stands, the LaChulis property then would be recorded, and all the parcels would then effectively be the city's property. If you want to change that, you certainly can during that window of 30 days. You could at least change your vote on it, and I believe the proper way to do that would be
You'd have to
that
file a
you
motion
would
of rescission
you would
for
you- we-
reconsideration.
yeah, you would, through a motion, to not record the order of taking, and then to clarify it and make it a clean bill, it would simply be a further motion to rescind the vote altogether, if the motion to record passed. But that's essentially what had happened 2 weeks ago.
okay, Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. First of all, the vote took place. There was votes in favor and opposition. I believe my colleagues who have spoken, I beg your pardon?
I'm sorry, it was unanimous.
As far as the taking and the 30-day?
There was a unanimous
Okay.
vote to take all of the properties by eminent domain and to hold Luchulis in abeyance for 30 days.
So in the 30-day window is because you can hold it for 30 days, but you can't hold it for more than 30 days. Before you have to record within 30 days, the order of taking.
If you failed to record within 30 days, you would not have perfected the taking, and
Correct.
you would have to start the process all over again.
But as far as our records and minutes, there was a vote. It was approved. The only way you can redo that is to move for reconsideration within the time allowed under Robert's rules, in terms of reconsidering that vote.
The council members that are not in favor of the taking, clearly the reason that the recording wasn't done immediately along with the other properties was, again, to provide a window of
Right,
opportunity
of negotiation.
to try to settle.
Right.
Again, there'd be nothing at all inappropriate of councilors making a motion to then simply not record, having potentially failed, if that is what ends up happening, to then not record the order of taking. And then the proper thing to do would be to completely rescind the order of taking.
Yeah, with all due respect, I would disagree because the motion was approved for the taking by eminent domain.
It was.
So, I would say any action to then would be tantamount to just reversing that vote without following anyway. Whatever the fact is, the 30 days was to try and we've been in negotiations forever with Mr. Luchulis. He did come in at the 11th hour with another proposal. It was just to give a shot at continuing negotiations. Now, maybe, and let's just see if that went anywhere or whether there's a report. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. That was the whole intent. If you record right away, then as you had indicated at that meeting, interest starts running. You have to pay, not only that, but plus interest. And so it was just to give time to negotiate.
If I may, maybe I can shed some light on that. The day after that vote, I talked with, I called Attorney Sophocles. I spoke with him maybe 3 days later. He'd actually seen a recording, I think his client gave him a tape of the meeting that night. He clearly knew how the council felt. No counteroffer has been made. I suggested if he wanted to make a counteroffer, he knew what the parameters were, and I have not received anything.
Okay. Roll call.
On what?
Not to
On
record.
what?
Not
On
to
the motion.
record.
Not to record. Okay.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue?
No.
Counselor Elliott?
No.
Mayor Martin?
No.
Counselor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Milonazo?
No.
Counselor Ramirez?
No.
Counselor Broderick?
No.
Okay, that motion fails. Next motion is by Councilor Caulfield. City Council requests the city manager have the proper department install a new Veterans Administration sign on Boston Road and Swan Street, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercier. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I attended the VA ceremonies last Friday with Walter Bayless and many veterans, along with Councilor Rita Mercier, about the new cable TV, new cable wiring, and so forth. I was approached to have some new signs put up on Industrial Avenue and on Swan Street, and 2 signs on Boston Road. The signs that are presently there now are faded, that no one can really see them or understand them, so that's the gist of the motion.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion's approved. The next motion is for Councilor Caulfield. Actually, Councilor, your motion has been dealt with on the handicap parking. The next motion is also Councilor Caulfield's. City Council requests the city manager and mayor send a letter of thanks to George Zaharoulis for his many years of service on the planning board, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercier. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Zaharoulis, I believe, served the city for 3 decades or more, and very dedicated to the planning board, and I think the request is in order to send Mr. Zaharoulis either a citation from your office, Mr. Mayor, or a thank you, and as well from the manager's office. Mr. Zaharoulis served I believe the city 35 years. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor, certainly I think be happy to send a letter or citation to Mr. Zaharoulis. I know it was reported in the newspaper that none had been forthcoming, and that was simply because no one had contacted my office about a retirement party that was apparently taking place. But certainly I agree this is well in order for Mr. Zaharoulis, and certainly have no problem providing such a commendation. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. Obviously, Mr. Zaharoulis has served the city for decades, and it would be customary to recognize that service with a citation. In my 4 years when I was mayor, many times councilors would contact the mayor's office and ask if they were attending a function or a party for a citation, whether it was retirement or birthday or what have you. And so because this was reported in the paper, almost indicating that there was some reason that certain councilors didn't attend a retirement party. Just for the record, I want to say I wasn't invited. So, and when I saw that no citation was given, I contacted the mayor because I thought that wouldn't be in keeping with custom and certainly anything that I've seen this mayor do. And he advised me that he wasn't invited. And he didn't even know about the party. And I spoke to other colleagues who likewise said they didn't know about the party. So that's not to say that anybody was entitled to or deserved it, but I think the record should be clear that there was no intention by the city to snub Mr. Zaharoulis. It's a question of communication, and there was no request made for it. So certainly it's appropriate to send the citation now, but because it was so prominent in the media, I think it's important to correct the record that by no means was there any intent to try and insult or be in any way disrespectful to Mr. Zaharoulis or to his service. And if there was any thought that that was the case, it simply wasn't. I'm sure, for whatever reason, people decided to invite certain people, and for whatever reason, councilors who attended didn't bring a citation. Be that as it may, I don't want there to be any impression that that was some type of disrespect, because nothing could be further from the truth.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I likewise would like to clarify something that made it into the newspaper that I wasn't aware of. But in terms of characterizing that Mr. Zaharoulis was despised by a majority of the councilors, I don't know if I'm included in that majority, but I would just want to state for the record that I choose not to be. I consider him a friend. I served with him for many years, and I've never heard him referred to in that manner. And I just think that he deserves credit for for the hard work that he put forward for the city. And I did support him, and he chose to retire, and he retired from the university, and I wish him the best. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilor Milanazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too just want to say for the record that I served with Mr. Zaharoulis in the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments for the last 3 years, and I enjoyed my time with Mr. Zaharoulis on the board, and I also worked very closely with George when I was planning director for a few years back in the early to mid '80s. Again, I was not invited to his retirement party, but I too want to wish him well. Thank you.
Thank you. In fact, I've worked well with Mr. Zaharoulis since his retirement on several issues, presenting keys to the city for members of the Greek community that he's brought to Lowell. So certainly we'll take care of this in short order. Next motion is by Councilor Milanazzo. Request the manager report on the status of the Acre Urban Renewal Plan, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Milanazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, just looking for an update to see if we have an update on specifically the Mount Vernon Street proposal that was before us back about 6 weeks ago. If we could get an update on where that stands, if there's actually an update at this particular point. I think there might be some movement. I just thought it would be good to clarify where we are at that point.
I could say briefly, the entire acre plan is just about complete. It's about in the 90% complete rate. Clearly, that piece of property is still outstanding. I have heard from some of the principals there and expect a meeting with them at some point, but I've not seen anything yet as to what ideas they may have.
Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. On that subject on Mount Vernon, is then the intent to continue to try and work that project or remove it from the plan? Is there?
I think we're looking to have further discussions with the principals, and if something changes, we would certainly bring it before the council. And
so there's not there's no intention now to take it out of the plan
not at
and
this
go
point.
through the public hearings to
Not at this
do
point.
that?
No,
Okay.
not at this point.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? I abstain from that vote. Next motion is by Councilor Milonazo to request the manager have the DPD submit draft RFQs for the Hamilton Canal development, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you. Back in March, on March 3rd, we actually received an update from the city manager indicating the status of the Hamilton Canal plan, and at the time talking about the master developer and preparing the RFQ, and I was wondering if we could get a draft without going, I guess, public. In consulting with the city solicitor earlier, we do need to keep whatever draft RFQ that the council may be given private until such time as it is advertised for public consumption. But again, looking to get an update as to where that draft RFQ is at this time. Thank you.
Okay, anything further on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Next motion is by Councilor Ramirez. The City Council requests the City Manager have the Division of Planning and Development examine methods to target and recruit large employers, determine what the needs of employers are, and identify whether the city could meet such needs, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion is actually a complement to Councilor Broderick's earlier motion this year regarding the marketing of the city. The difference is, I was hoping that maybe we could have the Director of Planning and Development actually put together a list of, a large list, hopefully, of the largest employers in New England, sit down with the folks in charge and see if there's a way that we can meet their needs and try to literally sell the city. I was reading the U.S. News and World Report recently where it says that Massachusetts has lost more jobs than any other state in the country, and so I point that out because I do not want anybody to interpret this motion as that the city hasn't done enough. This is something that the whole state is suffering from. And it's created, the mass exodus. A lot of folks are leaving because it's too expensive to live in Massachusetts and there's no jobs. However, this doesn't mean that we can't be proactive and continue to be very aggressive. I think everybody in this room wants to increase the commercial tax rate and bring more jobs to the city. So basically, that's it, Mr. Mayor, and I was hoping maybe that we could have a report from the manager's office through DPD within 30 to 45 days with a targeted list of employers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anything else in the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The motion is adopted. The next motion is by Councilor Broderick. City Council requests the city manager update and give recommendations on expert council for representation on the eminent domain taking voted on the Hamilton Canal District, seconded by Councilor Donahue. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the manager. I know you, the city solicitor provided us with some rate sheets and some fee, examples of fees from some of the, I guess I wouldn't call them local, but Boston law firms. And as we're talking about earlier, we're approaching the hour of recording against Mr. Lachulis. I believe the other ones have been recorded, and I made this motion a while back in terms of getting expert counsel on board to help our solicitor. I don't know what the next step would be. I suppose it would be to narrow it down, find out how much they want, what a retainer would be, what the services are, what participation the city would have, and so on. But if we're going to be recording in 16 days or so, I think that we need to get somebody on board, and I'm sure it's going to take a little while. But I don't think we can wait till after we start, the proceedings to engage somebody.
Thank you. Anything further on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Next motion is by Councilor Armin Mercier. Request the City Council take the necessary steps to create a new item on the City Council agenda entitled Special Reports, if any. Seconded by Councilor Rita Mercier. Councilor Armin Mercier.
After tonight, I'm not so sure that I support this motion. Actually, the idea was to bring forward, every now and then we make motions and we get reports in our package. Sometimes we get reports on our council table at the night of the meeting. And I thought maybe if there was an item on the agenda that someone who made the motion wanted to bring that report forward for the general public, they could do it under that kind of section. We now have report of subcommittees, and right after that there could be, is there a report, special report by anyone who wants to bring it forward. And that was only to bring out for discussion whether or not this is something that councils would want to do, is use that vehicle to let the general public know that we did get a report on a particular motion, and this is what basically it says. Because we do get a lot of calls, at least I get a lot of calls, well, what happened to that motion, what happened to that motion? And so it's just to have some discussion of whether or not there's a spot on the agenda where this could be brought forward. That's the purpose of it. But after tonight, I'm not so sure it's a good idea.
Well, the prolonged debate tonight was everything was on the agenda.
I know.
Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In fact, since we're into adding special reports, I just read the paper where I just would want a particular portion of the agenda set aside so that I could say something like, I'd like to congratulate the Lowell High School Band for competing in Montreal and winning the Festival of the Music competition. I'm very proud of our Lowell High School Band, so I'd like to put that in a special spot too. But thank you for letting me say it.
My motion was specifically for reports that the council asked for in a motion form that they've received an answer to, and not a wide open discussion about things like this.
Why not?
Which could
Why
take place
not?
under suspension of the rules. That could take place under suspension of the rules.
Okay.
So that's all. The intent here is if I make a motion to get a report from the assessor's office on a particular item, we get that report in our package. The general public is not aware of what the answer was. Maybe it would be an opportunity at a council meeting to give that report out to the general public. That's the only intention. It's not to create anything else.
Councilor Donahue.
One of the problems I have with the suggestion is you could have someone sit here and read their packet, point for point, this was this answer, this was that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
How do we define special? I mean, right now we deal with it under a suspension. Here's a suspension of the rules. I'd like to bring this forward and report on it. So I'm inclined to want to keep it that way. Not that you can't get the information out, but it's just, it could be a free-for-all. We're here, forever anyway.
Based on what I saw tonight, I totally agree with you, and I'm withdrawing the motion.
Well,
No,
I think
the intention
I think
was
the intent is a good one, because sometimes there's a lengthy report and it doesn't go back to the subcommittee, so it isn't like it can come in through a subcommittee report. It's just if someone wants to read, well, they're going to repair the street light, or they're going to do this, or they're going to do, you know what I'm saying? Some things are geared toward an individual, and when you get the answer, you call that person and say, here's the answer. So I think we can deal with it under suspension. I mean, I think the intent is a good one.
Motion's been withdrawn, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, the matter's withdrawn.
Oh, all right. I think it's, can I speak anyway, just briefly?
Councilor Elliott.
Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good idea because I've received, similar comments that I saw the motion, on the cable and they discussed it and we never heard anything further. So, I mean, I understand based upon, I don't know, whatever happened tonight. I'm missing that, but I mean, there was a healthy discussion, but I think it's important to come back.
Just the length.
Just, to come back and the 9 out of 10 times we want a report from the manager. What happens to that report? Maybe the provision should be similar to one of the other rules we have under unanswered and unresponsive motions where you're required to call the clerk, the day before to put it on the agenda. We all will have received our packet the night before. So if there's a report that you would like to discuss or follow up, you just have to notify the clerk. That sort of prevents, anyone from coming in and reading their packet. But if you want to withdraw the motion, I
think it could be covered.
I understand, but
I think it'd be covered under suspension of the rules.
okay.
Okay, the motion's been withdrawn. There's no need for a vote. The last two motions are mine. Any objection to reading them from here? The first one is the council requests the city manager have the law department draw the proper vote to name the corner of Lewis Street and Jefferson Street as the Reverend Philip Giolapsos Way, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercier. The motion speaks for itself. This is a request on behalf of the Greek community by a beloved member of that community. I think the only matter would be to check and make sure that this location is not named for somebody else. Otherwise, I think the motion speaks for itself. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? That motion's approved. The final motion is the request the City Council begin the search process for the position of City Manager, seconded by Councilor Donahue. What I had asked is for the Human Relations Head, Kathy Tierney, to pull the ads and process that we went through and the locations and places that we advertised, and ask those to be distributed tonight. I don't know if, apparently that, were the things on the desk tonight?
Yes.
And I apologize, I had hoped to get those in the packet, but that is, those were the locations we advertised, and I think the form of the advertisement was there. My suggestion would be we repeat that same process and plug the current salary into the salary ordinances, but I'll open the matter up for discussion. Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we're opening this motion up for discussion, my suggestion, which I probably don't even think I'd get a second for, would be to support someone in that position as city manager on an interim basis for 18 months, just so that we could then have the next council in line support the person that they'd choose to be there. I don't know why we couldn't have the assistant city manager step in and with all the knowledge that he has and put him in the interim. That's my suggestion. So if there was, all those that support this motion record me as no.
Councilor Donahue.
I'm not even clear what, was that a motion? Was that a motion to amend the motion?
No,
I
I'm
didn't understand what it was.
just being recorded. I'm speaking how I feel. And I'm voting when the mayor says, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying yes. I want to be recorded as no.
Oh,
I
all
don't.
right. I didn't know whether it was an amendment or not, or what the purpose was. But, so this is the description and the places before. We have, the ordinance is the same, just the range is different, is that
Yes.
correct?
I believe so, yes.
And I know the solicitor gave us the ordinance last week, copy of the ordinance. Oh, here it is, never mind. So the range is 125 to 145?
Yeah, I don't know that every councilor has the ordinance, in all fairness.
I think everybody got a copy
They do,
last week.
okay.
So that would be the only change. I guess is this for discussion now?
It's for discussion.
Okay.
I think it could be,
Well,
I thought it was important to begin the matter.
Right.
To begin the discussion.
I would say the same description would be, I wouldn't see any purpose of changing the description except for the salary range. And as far as the date, it would seem to me today is May, actually, it was May 10th then?
Today's May 9th. It was very similar time of
Okay.
year.
So there was about a 30-day window at that point. I would say 21 or 30 days, whatever the wish of the council, but, and direct the, I mean, I don't think there's any need to send this to a subcommittee. I think it's something that the council can approve and get the process started. I guess the only question is what would be the date. The range is spoken to for the, by the ordinance that it should be, I'd move to put in the current range and leave the same description in its entirety with the exception of when the application should be due by. Does anybody have a calendar?
Councilor Ramirez?
Thank you. And what exactly is the range that we're putting in there? Do we know that tonight?
I think the
ordinance.
Ordinance speaks to a floor of, the low end is 125 and the high end is 145.
Okay. And, Mr. Mayor, I know there's an organization called the International Association of City Managers. Is that the Beacon? Is that the Beacon, or is that two separate entities? Does anybody know?
The Beacon is a publication from the Mass Municipal Association. They're separate organizations.
Oh, they're separate? Okay, because the city, did you say they're the same? No. Oh, okay, so can we advertise in the International Association of City Managers? I'm not sure exactly what their address is, but maybe we can get that. And does anybody have any problem adding that to the advertisement?
I don't have any difficulty with it. We should just find out when the last publication was. If it just came out last week.
Oh, okay,
then
that's true.
and I believe it's a monthly publication. If we missed the date, then probably wouldn't make sense to advertise.
Yeah, I mean, if we've already missed the deadline, then we don't want to get too far out. That's right, Councilor Elliott, thank you. That'd be my only comment.
Councilor Milonazo?
The date, if we were to use the same date, would be, I believe, June 8th, if we did it on a Thursday. June 9th of 2000 was a Thursday. I don't know if we wanted to keep it the same, or doesn't really matter, I suppose. Unless we wanted to go for that Friday, which would be June 9th.
June 9th.
Same date.
Same day.
As a cutoff date, is there any issue with that?
No.
We get them in our packet? Does it make a difference?
No.
Did what?
I'm sorry, Councilor, I didn't
If
hear.
we do it on a Thursday, will we get them in the packet for Friday? Does that make a difference in the week by holding up a day? I don't know.
Well, once we get them, we have to set up interviews. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, I mean, if they came in, yeah, it's a fair point. If all the application deadline is a Thursday, the councilors could have them all for a Friday.
I make a motion that we adopt the recommendations or suggestions that we just change the fee schedule and use a June 9th date deadline and advertise with the same schedule, including the ICMA publication if it's permissible.
Okay.
Second by Councilor Donahue. Councilor Donahue.
And with regard to my recollection, that the last time I thought we were provided the applications as they came in. So in other words, you know, each week they came to the clerk's office and the clerk had them put in our packet each week so that you didn't get a whole bundle at once. You got to see them as they came in. So I would ask that the clerk distribute them to the council on a weekly basis during the advertising period. And then the other issue, the Mass Municipal, I don't know when they actually went to press, but they do have an online portion now. So just to make certain that the clerk posts this online with Mass Municipal.
I actually received one today, so
we're probably outside the print window. So, but the posting should be online with Mass Municipal.
Just a point
Councilor
of
Milonazo.
clarification. Should the council decide to adjust the salary, that would require an ordinance change, correct?
Correct.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, is there a request for a roll call on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Councilor Rita Mercier opposed. The motion is approved. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The meeting is adjourned.